You're
because
going live.
because they're less white. I got it.
Right. Okay.
And
It's
the first,
sad. It's
the first,
sad.
no, honey, I don't even. When I look at it, it's like it's not even sad to me. I'm like, everybody just get on over it. How about that?
Yeah. Because in my family, we come in all shades.
We all
So
do.
I love them all.
We don't glorify, but we don't glorify that. We glorify the lighter skinned people in our families. The light,
Uh-huh.
the Asian, you have it. I've seen it in my own
Uh-huh.
family.
We have Reverend Johnson.
Had to kick people out. And Reverend Johnson has known me since I was a child. And my father
Uh-huh.
would have to. My father has talked about people who they would not, my parents would not have come back to their home because they would favor
Right.
Jesse before my brother Yusuf and Jackie were born, and my sister, baby sister Jackie. They would favor
Right.
Jesse and me,
Oh, okay.
and they would ignore my brother Jonathan. And my father said,
Oh,
my
wow.
father, oh no, and there's no, oh wow, that's what we do. And so my father was like, oh, I put a halt to that. They just never came back. Next year,
That's the way to do it.
you're not gonna come to
Sounds
my
like my
house
great grandmother.
and mistreat. Everybody has. Everybody can be white something except black people.
Yeah. Oh, well, no one could figure out what the hell I was. That was for sure. They're always asking me, "What are you?" I'm an American.
Oh yeah, and I'm feeling you, but they're not gonna let you be black. You see what I mean? So
Oh, yeah.
that gives
Yeah.
you some space. Black people have no
Mhm.
space, and it's just like they
Right.
just found out Johnny Cash's wife, who they always suspected of being black. They just did a DNA
Mhm.
test, and they found out that she indeed did have black ancestry. That's the rub.
Ah.
It's
Okay.
always the rub.
Okay.
The blackness is always the issue.
Right. Right. That was. I read her story. Yeah, that was really interesting.
And all black folks looked
Yeah.
at her and said, "Oh, okay, if you say so." Right, right, Vicky. Okay,
Right.
if
Right.
you insist, okay, you can go on and be Sicilian. I got it, sis. I got you.
Oh, I'm so mixed. I could be anything.
No.
But
People will
Sicilians are
still
black.
people will still classify you as white. I'm not mad. I just think
Mhm.
we need to acknowledge these issues,
I
the
I
craziness in
think
our
this would be a
family.
great topic.
Oh,
It would be a great topic for one of your
I'll do it,
shows.
gang. I'll do it because I've done it many times, and I get beaten up because people will say, "Well, where are you in this?" And I've seen your family, and you don't understand what I, as a dark skinned person, go through. I've heard that too, and it's like, okay, got it, got you.
Yeah, because there's even sororities depending on the color of your skin. My friend, a light skinned African American, yeah, she got, let's say, not literally, but she got beat up when we were in law school.
Oh,
Oh,
sure,
yeah,
I mean, but that's
because of
real.
her skin color.
Well, no, because of the
Yeah.
privilege, but no, because of the privilege that she's gotten. And I'm not
Mhm.
saying that it's right, but I'm saying that it's real.
Mhm.
I'm not saying it's right. I mean, there's some girls who courted my baby sister on the bus when she was about 5. She was a few weeks shy of her 6th birthday, and they called her a green-eyed mongrel, and they were going to beat her up. And they were 13. My sister was,
Wow.
yeah, 'cause she was very, very, very light.
Right.
And ironically, my brother was taught by, who's very dark, was taught by the daughter who was leading the charge on my baby sister.
Oh.
And so my brother had, I mean, the Lord will keep you moving this thing. So he had to go say, what did
Right.
you do to my sister? What did your daughter do to my sister on that school bus?
Right. Right.
They,
Yeah.
they cornered
That
her.
was
I mean,
something.
but lighter skinned
Yeah.
people in this society still get the breaks. That's just real. And
Yeah.
so, we have to, and when Jennifer
1 minute.
Lopez was trying to get on, she was a person of color, but when she got arrested with Puff Daddy, and when she separated herself from him,
Mhm.
she put on her
She
papers that
was
she was
right.
white. And people in Puerto Rico
Mhm.
are mad about that now. Gotta let you all go.
Oh,
Thank you,
have
thank
a
you,
great
thank you.
show.
Have a good one, Vicky. talk about
Hi.
colorism. Hey, everybody. We're talking about colorism. So, we've got a lot to talk about today. You know, Juneteenth is upon us.
30.
So, what is Juneteenth? And what about the Biden-Putin summit? Can't wait to talk about that today with Dave Lindorf from the This Can't Be Happening website and Latasha Brown from Black Voters Matter. All right, everybody, let's get to it.
15.
Reverend Vicky Johnson. Ooh, we
10.
had to adjust my headset.
Because facts matter.
5.
Glad to be here.
Always.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Determined, unstoppable, achieving the impossible. We're standing tall with our heads held high. We are victorious.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Wednesday, June 16th, 2021. The Biden-Putin summit is upon us. What is going to happen there? What is going to happen there? It's going to be very interesting. We're going to be talking about that at the top of the next hour with Dave Lindorf, award-winning investigative journalist. He has the website This Can't Be Happening. And, of course, Latasha Brown and Black Voters Matter and many organizations, Reverend Dr. William Barber, actually Bishop Barber now. They are going to be going to a voter registration tour. They're going to be heading to West Virginia, to Washington D.C., because we're in the throes of 2022, that election. But we're also looking at Juneteenth, which has now become a federal holiday. What do you think about that, everybody? What do you think about that? Do you know what happened with Juneteenth? Do you know Black people have been freed for more than 2 years, but they didn't know it, and their slave masters did not tell them? Oh, 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. If you want to text me at that number, you may do so thanks to GWC Injury Lawyers. And I want you to meet the Morning Stars, Big Bree. Hey, Brian Martin. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. If not, please correct me. Barbara Jean Lewis and Andre and Will Jones and Carol from the left coast and Samantha and Paula and Daryl and Linda and Daphne and Robert and Kenneth D and Philip Sharp and R.A. Araya and Michael Ann and Jewel and so many of you who are joining us and Shelby. I want you all to please like and share, and please like and subscribe on my new YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show channel. Please. And thank you so much for your support every day. Let's get right to these headlines, everybody, because this is a big day on the Santita Jackson Show and in the news. Chicago, we're going to have a high of 72 degrees. I'm sure it's going to be warmer, but it's nice and sunny. It's a little cool now, but it feels good. Mississippi. What is that? Minneapolis, St. Paul, 92 degrees and sunny. You all are so much warmer, like this particular season, than we are. Wow. But things have been real hot up there. Sending you much love, AM 950 radio. My family up there, and my WCPT 820 family here in Chicago. The Dow closed down 94 points yesterday. The NASDAQ closed down 101 points. The S&P 500 closed down 8 points. And in baseball, wow, a shutout. The Mariners trounced the Twins 10-0. They'll be facing off against tonight. Will they find redemption? And, well, the Sox, they shut down the Rays. They'll be playing a game tonight. And the Cubs, well, they fell to the Mets. Mets 3, Cubs 2. The Cubs will be facing off against the Mets a little later on today. Well, the Nets 114, the Bucks 108. The Hawks versus the 76ers, and the Clippers versus the Jazz tonight. Well, everybody, people are looking to see what's going to happen with President Biden and Russian President Vladimir Putin. President Joe Biden is meeting with Russian President Putin in Geneva today for a much-anticipated summit that caps off Biden's first trip abroad as president. The goal of the meeting is to, according to the White House, restore predictability and stability to the U.S.-Russia relationship. Biden and Putin will discuss future arms control arrangements, the recent ransomware attacks that the U.S. believes have been carried out by criminal groups in Russia, climate change, the Kremlin-imposed restrictions on the U.S. diplomatic presence in Russia. Biden and his administration are still fully formulating a strategy on how to approach the U.S. Russian relationship. And what do you think about it, everybody? It seems that we go in and out with Russia, in and out. What is going on? What do you think about this? So we're going to see. He appears to have prepared in depth. It's been very intensive, according to White House sources, what the president has been going through to get prepared for this meeting. So we're going to see how this all works out. A previously secret batch of emails was released by the House Oversight Committee yesterday, and the messages shed new light on how former President Donald Trump pressured the Justice Department during his quest to overturn the 2020 election results. The White House and the DOJ aren't supposed to mesh when it comes to investigations, of course, and prosecutions in order to keep politics out of the justice system. But these latest emails show Trump was unrelenting in crossing that invisible line that he and his lawyers saw the DOJ as a way to legitimize their quest to establish that the election claims were false. Wow. Also of note, according to this report, Jeffrey Rosen, acting Attorney General, in the final days of the Trump presidency, was prepared to resign rather than buy into President Trump's claims. He refused to do the president's bidding, everybody. The CDC has determined that the Delta variant of the COVID-19 disease is now the variant of concern, a designation given to strains of the virus that scientists believe are more transmissible or can cause more severe disease. Currently, this variant, which was first discovered in India, accounts for about 10% of infections in the United States. But some experts are worried it could become the dominant strain. Everybody, whether you have been vaccinated or not, you still need to wear your masks. You still need to practice safe social distancing. Physical distancing, not social. So everybody, just please be careful. Be careful. We got good news coming to us from Reverend Vicki Johnson, Pastor Vicki Johnson. I love saying that. So few women get a chance to helm a pulpit, and she's doing such a magnificent job here in Chicago at St. Thomas Lutheran Church. Pastor Johnson, we need some good news today. What a day we have here.
Yes, we do need good news, and thank God that there is always good news. Good morning, Santita. Good morning to your friends and stars. What a blessing it is to be alive today. And today, I just want to share with you these words. Don't break before your breakthrough. Don't break before your breakthrough. One of the most difficult things for us to do is to wait. We've had to do it all of our lives, and we still don't like it. We wait for a dangling tooth as a child to finally fall out so that the tooth fairy could come. We waited from July to December for Christmas, a long wait, creating a list along the way and checking it twice. And on December 24th, we could not wait to see what would be under the tree on Christmas Day. When our aunts and uncles would visit us from out of town, they'd ask, "How old are you?" And because we couldn't wait to be the next age, we would say, "I'm 11 and a half." Chicago Public School students can't wait to get out of school because this has been quite a year of learning. They can't wait, and they get out next week. As adults, we have problems waiting for our breakthrough. We apply for credit and can't wait until it is approved, so we break and go to the quick cash store with ridiculous interest rates, and our breakthrough was right around the corner. We prayed for healing in our minds, our bodies, our spirits, and in our relationships and things that are very similar to that. And we get right to the brink of the breakthrough and we break because it didn't happen fast enough. They say that good things come to those who wait. Isaiah put it this way, but they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. I know you get tired of waiting. I know it's not easy. I know you wish that there was another way. I wish it too. If while you are waiting, though, you stay close to your God through prayer, if while you are waiting, you read the Word of God and other spiritual and encouraging material, if while you are waiting, you surround yourself with supportive and encouraging people, and if while you are waiting, you just sing a simple song, it will strengthen you so that you will not break before your breakthrough. And if you can do this, to me, that's good news.
Amen to that. Well, it seems that we are ready to break down. It's just before. It's always darkest before the dawn, and we forget that.
Yes.
Just before, when you give up, when you're about to give up and give out, that's when you get the breakthrough. Thank you for that. I needed
That's
I needed
right.
to hear that today. I really, really did. It's just like when you're on that last penny that you have, and if you know, but you know what? Just very quickly, I've got about a minute before we bring on Dr. Holden. Why is it that just before do you know why it is that just before we give up? I mean, it just seems that when you let it go and just say, you know what, God, you got this, it seems like things then happen. At least in my own life.
Yes. Well, what we are waiting on things to happen, but the scripture from Isaiah says, they that wait upon the Lord. So instead of waiting on the thing, we should be waiting on the Lord to work on our behalf. What it is that we haven't turned it over. We're still trying to figure it out for ourselves. We're intelligent. We know things. We know people. And so we do everything in our power to make it happen. And that's good. But after we do that, there's some spiritual work that needs to be done underneath the surface. And that's the waiting on the Lord. That's when our strength is renewed. The rest of that scripture says, they shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint.
Thank you for that. I needed
Wait
that.
on the
Wait
Lord.
on the Lord.
Yes,
Wait on the Lord.
yes,
Okay, wait on the
yes.
Lord. Wait on the Lord.
And and don't break before your breakthrough.
Ooh, don't break before you break through. Everybody, hold on. I don't care what your belief system is. I just hope that you
That's
get
right.
something good from this. And you might not even, because I have some dear friends who I just found out are atheist or agnostic. And I respect that. That's not mine. But I hope that you can get something from this no matter what, because, you know, you need something to hold on to, not just something. But I just believe in holding on to God. But whatever it is, let's hold on to each other and we can help each other through this. Sending that's especially for Bab Baleli today. We just love Bab,
Mm.
everybody. He's one of our morning stars. We love Bab. We love Bab. And what I love about the morning stars is that they really help each other and encourage each other and love each other. They've become a family. We all have. Love y'all. And what did Daphne say? This is a note to self. Hey, I love you, Reverend Vicki Johnson. Why don't you stay right here? Because we have got world renowned epidemiologist, the brilliant Dr. Deborah Holden. She's the Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University. At the bottom of the hour, we're going to be talking about Juneteenth. If you'd like to stick around for that, Reverend Johnson, you surely can. What is Juneteenth? But first, let's talk about this COVID-19, which, okay, Dr. Deborah Holden, now we've got the Delta variant. Every day there's something new. But you had an interesting meeting that we're going to talk about at some at some length at another time. You met Dr. Kazmia Corbett, the developer of the Moderna vaccine?
Yeah, and she was outstanding and awesome. So she was the former lead of the vaccine team at the NIH as a branch for Dr. Fauci lead, the National Institute on Allergy and Infectious Diseases. She developed what's called mRNA 1273. That is the technology that formed the patent for what is vaccine. And she's a bad sister. She's got a lot of experience in the lab. She worked on SARS. She worked on MERS. She worked on dengue virus. And prior to COVID-19 pandemic, she was already working on understanding both the evolution and vaccine development for coronaviruses. And there's 7 of them right now, and the common cold is included in that family. It was just so very reassuring to talk to her because she reaffirmed. She said this mRNA technology is not new. It's not new. It's been under development for quite some time, and it was coming to bear. It was coming to market. We just accelerated the pace of actually, creating a candidate vaccine and bringing it to market because of a pandemic. He said if it wasn't for the pandemic, you would have seen this anyway. It just wouldn't have come as fast. One thing that I did find interesting that she said to me, she too is not a big fan of the name Operation Warp Speed. She says it's unfortunate that name was provided because it did, I think, elevate for people concerns that everything was just moving too fast. And it overemphasized the speed at which things were going, but not the rigor and the quality with which things were going. So very reaffirming, very reassuring. Last thing I want to say that she said that I found very, very insightful is, we still have a lot of myths about this vaccine. A lot of myths. And a lot of people are still reluctant. And she said, if you are someone who is weary of the mRNA vaccine technology, which I thought she had a very balanced perspective about it. She said, look, I'm not here to force anybody to do anything. I don't tell people what decisions to make for their health. That's for them to say, not me. She said, but if people really have a concern about the mRNA vaccine technology, there's 2 other options available to them. One is available right now, and one will be available in the 3rd quarter of the year. And the 3rd quarter of the year starts July 1. He said if people don't want don't trust mRNA, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is available. And even better, the Novavax vaccine will be available in the 3rd quarter. And I do not think that's going to be through an emergency use authorization like the others. Because remember, emergency use authorization is still an approval process. It's just not the full approval. The bar for a full FDA approval is you have to have substantial evidence of a medication or a therapeutic or vaccine's effectiveness. And in order to demonstrate that, you've got to have some time and you've got to have some numbers. The Moderna and Pfizer vaccine are in the process of getting full approval, and I'm pretty confident that the Novavax vaccine will have to get the full approval because the urgency, the need to get a vaccine out on the market has now been resolved somewhat because we do have 3 current vaccines. So the Nova vaccine will likely come out this next quarter, so after July 1, and we'll have full FDA approval. Hopefully that will assuage some people's concerns and we'll see better uptake because people will have more options available to them.
Well, let me ask you, Reverend Johnson.
Yes.
And, I'm asking her, Dr. Verholden, because she's the pastor of a church. She also comes out of the civil rights movement. So she has a particular view. How do you think this kind of information will be received by many of the people you see? Because we see people who have a lot of questions who feel all kinds of ways today. How do you think that will make people feel?
I think for some people that are really serious in their thought processes about not taking the vaccination, for them, choices beyond those that have been thrown at us will give them a better feel for what needs to be done so that we can reach herd immunity. I think that this is a very I'm excited about it, and I think that it will benefit us in the short run having these other options.
But what do we also, I think we need to have the options, and I think we also need to know about therapeutics. And Dr. Verholden, one of the things that you've also really been talking to us about, and it's not been on the edges of your conversation, you've been emphasizing how important it is for us to really optimize our health. Anyway, no matter what, in or out of COVID, you said look, first of all, this is endemic. This is in the system now. We are always going to have to live with COVID one way or another. But what we've got to do is really become more healthful. My question for you is, if you get COVID-19, is there any treatment? Or do you just have to gut it out?
Well, so that's also evolving too, and it's really interesting because many of the same people, including Dr. Corbett, and if you are unfamiliar with Dr. Corbett, I just really encourage folks to look up Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett. She's just so amazingly inspiring and on her game. A part of the work that they were doing in her lab, and funny enough, she started her brand new job on Monday. She is now running a vaccine laboratory at Harvard School of Public Health. So we'll be seeing other great things come from her. And she has moved from Bethesda to Boston. But the same people that study the mechanisms by which, viruses evolve and impact the human body and then, develop the vaccines are also in the therapeutics world. So Dr. Corbett was also a part of the team who helped to develop
1 minute.
The process for monoclonal antibodies, which, has been a real game changer and a lifesaver for people who contract COVID. And we are still figuring out why, but it looks like a lot of the asymptomatic people and a lot of the people who have low symptoms don't seem to have as much of an immune response to COVID. So oftentimes what you'll get less antibodies
30.
in people who don't really have many symptoms. And this isn't a hard and fast rule. It's just generally what we've been seeing. And then for people who get really sick, they have a
15.
lot of immune response, but sometimes it just doesn't seem to be enough. So these
10.
monoclonal antibodies have been really transformative for people because it's
5.
giving that, immune boost, a real running start for people who seem to be struggling with COVID. But yeah, and there are other therapeutics being developed. It's almost like the equivalent of a Tamiflu. Is underway for COVID-19. Yeah, it'll be sort of like Tamiflu.
Okay, let's cut out of here to this break. We're coming up. We're going to be talking about Juneteenth, everybody. But there was a lag between when Black people were freed and when they were told they were free. It's a national holiday. But there's hope on the way for COVID-19. A lot of great things are happening in terms of developing medicines to deal with this disease. We're going to work that out together even as we cross this awful threshold. 600,000 Americans have died from it. Let's go forward, everybody. More of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. All right. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Reverend Johnson. Do you want to participate with us on Juneteenth?
Thank you. I wish I could, but I've got to go.
I always want to give you the option.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Sandy.
Thank you. Thank you for my breakthrough conversation. I needed that. I'm not kidding. I'm very serious.
Yes. Thank God.
Oh, yeah. I needed that. But it's so funny thing. The old song, Deborah and Reverend Pastor Johnson, Dr. Deb and Pastor Johnson, stop by the church sometime. Something might be said. What?
Sometime.
Sometime.
Yeah.
That'll help you on your way. That was all my father asked me to do when I went away to college. He said, just one more thing when I was walking out the door that night. We had to drive.
Stop by the church.
He said, no, he said, I need you to find a church home. I was like, okay. He said, that's all that.
We have Attorney Patillo.
Thank you. He didn't ask me to do anything else. I said, that was odd because I went to church every Sunday, just about. And plus, Push was church for us, too.
Right.
But my father was very, very firm about us going to a formal church. And he said, baby, you're now an adult. Your mother and I have told you everything that we know to tell you. But I'm here to tell you that the storms of life are going to hit, and they hit without warning. And if your soul is not anchored in the Lord, you'll drift away. And I would have failed you as a father. So, oh yeah, I mean, that was his thing. He said, I could not live with that because I know I will have failed you if you do not have a church home. And don't you know he showed up at my dorm the next Sunday, girl, and I was asleep in my bed. Yes, I was. I'm not gonna lie. Yes, I was. I was asleep. And thank God he got there early. Because at that time, my father was very popular, so people did not know that this was my dad yet. And I really needed him to be away just for a few days, just so that I could, they almost treated him like a rock star at that time in our lives. So
right,
I needed, a little bit of space. Honey, he was sitting in the lobby, which was completely dark because everybody had been out Saturday night, everybody but me, really. And he said, I went to chapel today, and you were not there. Daddy's very upset. He didn't say I'm upset. He said, Daddy's disappointed. I was like,
Did you tell him you were going to the late service?
No. Girl, it was like 11:30 or something. I was tired. And I never slept in on Sunday, ever. I never slept in on Sunday, ever. Because, we had Push on Saturday.
1 minute.
And then we had, church on Sunday. So I never had a day. And then we also went over to Reverend Hardy's church because remember we were trying to, continue to support his ministry. Reverend Evans over there too. So come on, all his sons and children in the ministry he wanted to have support. I love you, Reverend. And Attorney Patillo.
Good morning.
Oh my goodness, mic drop. Dwight McKee would be with us today, but there's a documentary on his work that is coming out, everybody. It's going to be debuting here, I think this weekend. So he's at the Tribeca Film Festival in New York, debuting. He and Reverend Dr. Marshall Hatch, their documentary is being debuted. How about that?
15.
What's the name of the documentary?
I do not know, but Vicki, that's going to be
10.
Yeah, we should do one on the youth division.
5.
Oh boy.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Determined, unstoppable, achieving the impossible. We're standing tall with our heads held high. We are victorious.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want you to call me or text me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. This is the Santita Jackson Show. At the top of the hour, we're going to be talking about the Biden-Putin summit, and then Latasha Brown's going to be joining us to talk about Black Voters Matter and their campaign to register people to vote and to move Joe Manchin in West Virginia. Can't wait to have that conversation with her, but this is an exciting conversation that we're going to have right now because the U.S. Senate has unanimously passed a bill making Juneteenth a federal holiday. Wow. Now, this legislation gained momentum last year in the wake of the killing of George Floyd. A lot happened in the wake of the killing of George Floyd. But I think we need to understand what Juneteenth really is, what it was, what it is, and how it should be taught. Right? What is the significance of us making this holiday, in which all Black people in the United States were able to celebrate freedom? What is the significance of that? How does that land on all Americans, black, white, brown, yellow, and red? And I want to know what you think about how you're going to celebrate or commemorate Juneteenth. This is something that people in Texas have been honoring for decades, but the rest of us in the United States have kind of been slow to catch on to it, or when we hear about it, we kind of shrug our shoulders. July 4th has been our thing. But now it is federal law. It's a federal holiday. So what do you think about that? It needs to pass the House and be signed by President Joe Biden to become law. Um, and I think that it will. Well, we'll see. So, we've got attorney Robert Patillo, host of his own show on WAOK in Atlanta, of course, every Sunday from 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Of course, he's Southeastern Regional Director of Rainbow Push, brilliant civil rights lawyer, and of course, our epidemiologist who really does a lot of study of history. And I think that, I want everybody to weigh in on this conversation, Dr. Deborah Verholden, because it's important to everybody. You do not have to be an historian to weigh in on this. You don't have to be someone who works in the civil rights or the civil liberties space to weigh in on this. As Americans, I think we need to weigh on this. I want to know what you think about this holiday. What do you think about it? What do you know about Juneteenth? So let me start with you. Why don't you set the table for us, Robert Patillo? Juneteenth, what is it? And what is some of the controversy embedded in this holiday?
Well, Juneteenth started in Galveston, Texas. It's normally celebrated around June 19th now, but it commemorates the anniversary when the announcement was made that by the Union Army that Black people were actually free in Texas. We had been proclaimed free months and months earlier, but this is when the message finally made it down to the African Americans there in Texas. There was no Twitter back then, so it took around a while for the message to get there. So it's the official date of that we celebrate to commemorate the ending of our enslavement. We had the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, but what that did was proclaim free any slaves who were in Confederate territory. So there wasn't really that much of an effect of it because those areas were currently in open rebellion. We could celebrate the 14th Amendment, another date when we were officially constitutionally declared free. Symbolically declared Juneteenth to be the celebration of the end of African American enslavement in this country. The reason that it's important that it now becomes a federal holiday is for a long time, America denied much of this history, particularly right now when we're having this debate nationally about diversity, inclusion, and education, which is being disguised and co-opted as critical race theory. It's important that we as a nation are coming together and realizing that we cannot continue to cover up this history. If you went to school as I did in the South, going through elementary and even high school, there's a completely different history book for AP high school than high school history than there was for regular high school history. The reason being that the AP class had to be on a national standard and the regular class was on a local standard. So the local standard, they didn't even call them slaves. They called them migrant workers in the South. It taught and remember this is in the early 2000s that this was being taught, that they were migrant workers, that instead of talking about the brutality of slavery, they was the books actually, and I still have my textbook around the house. I looked into it the other day. They talked about the War of Northern Aggression. That literally was written into textbooks less than 20 years ago. The Lost Cause, where they described the fact that the South had entered into this union with the United States of America voluntarily. So there's nothing legally binding these states to being part of the union, and therefore they had the right to succeed at any point in time. And it was the aggressive nature of the Northern armies and President Lincoln that caused the Civil War. This is what generations of people in this country were taught. So the fact that now we're finally acknowledging that we were indeed founded as a slave nation, that we prospered as a slave nation, and that those enslaved individuals had to be freed is an important step towards reconciliation. America never had a Truth and Reconciliation Council as they had in South Africa. We know that Reconstruction was cut off early as a result of the Hayes-Tilden Compromise in the 1876 election. The Positive Comitatus removing federal troops from the South, dooming us to 100 years of Jim Crow. But until America can come to terms with its past and then start repairing those issues going forward, you're always going to have a broken and fractured nation. And even now, there are conservatives who are very angry about this becoming a federal law, because the new pedagogy is this idea that we should not be talking at all about things that make white people upset or feel bad about themselves. And that is part of the reason that we have to acknowledge these issues and present this as facts and present this as history, because otherwise that history is lost.
Why do you think, and I want to hear from everyone, I want you to call me today, 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. And Morning Stars, I want to hear from you too. Why do you think that we're more than 100 years out from slavery, but as my father points out often, we were in slavery longer than we have been free? Why is it so upsetting? First you, Robert, and then you, Dr. Deborah Holden, because you're in academia. Why is it so upsetting for white people now to hear about slavery? I mean, it's something, and many white people say, well, I didn't have anything to do with that. And, I didn't hold any slaves, and my grandparents didn't either. I said, but, my grandparents immigrated here. I'm like, yeah, but if you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound, because the country was built by enslaved labor, unpaid labor, not free labor, unpaid labor. So you came to a country that was developed by slavery and by slaves, right? So this was your come up. Talk to me, Robert.
Well, think about the mythology and the propaganda that we teach as history in this country. There are far more people in this country who know who Johnny Appleseed is than know who Crispus Attucks was. There are far more people who can tell you about Paul Bunyan and his Big Blue Ox Babe. They can tell you about the Stonewall Rebellion, or who can tell you about John Brown, or who can tell you about Nat Turner, so on and so forth. America has built itself on this mythology. George Washington had wooden teeth. He chopped down a cherry tree, and he had to go to his father and say, I could not tell a lie, because he was just such an honest man. Leave out the part about when he died, he had 357 slaves left in his will to his wife Martha, and that his wife Martha refused to free those people, and that he was one of the most notorious slave hunters of the 18th century, hunting his runaway slaves down no matter where they went in the country in order to drag them back to his plantation. If you ever have time, look at the story of Ona Jacobs Washington, who was one of Washington's favorite slaves, who was able to escape, lived a just tragic life after escaping, and she was finally interviewed in the 18 teens, I believe, later in life, on her deathbed nearly, and they asked her, well, you could have lived in luxury as one of Washington's slaves. You were a house Negro. You were one of his favorites. Why would you go off and live? And she died in complete poverty, penniless. Husband predeceased her, all 5 children predeceased her, because of the horrors of her enslavement for Washington. They said, well, why would you go through all that instead of being one of George Washington's favorite slaves? She said, I would rather die free than live in enslavement. So in America, when you teach yourself, Johnny Appleseed, Paul Bunyan, George Washington's wooden teeth, and so on and so forth, it's hard to reconcile that with the idea that this nation bought and sold and enslaved and beat and brutalized and raped and robbed millions of black people on no other account than because of the color of their skin. And then also, America does not want to think about that, because once you start thinking about it, that means you have to do something to repair it. And what do we call reparative measures? We call them reparations. And that is what they do not want to get to. And that's what makes it so difficult to have these conversations in this country. Because once you know something, you can't deny it anymore. Once you know something, you're required to do something about it. And that's what America doesn't want to do.
You know, George Washington, by the way, had some of his slaves' teeth in his own mouth, right? You know?
Yeah, I was going to say that. He did not have wooden teeth. Contrary to popular, because and with your adult mind, not your elementary school mind, with your adult mind, you say to yourself, that wouldn't work, would it? No, the wooden teeth would not work. What he did was steal the teeth of living slaves. These weren't even dead slaves because they weren't healthy enough. He stole the teeth of living slaves. This was before anesthesia, before dental work. They were still bleeding you with leeches at the time. And he will break their jawbones to steal their molars. And they will put them into these metal and wood contraptions that were the dentures of the time. And he would eat his food with the teeth of his enslaved. Now, that doesn't sound like the father of our country.
Yes, it
That
does.
doesn't sound like somebody we should have.
Yes,
That
it
doesn't
does.
sound like somebody we should have on Mount Rushmore.
No. Yes,
But
it does. Yes, it
that's
does.
the college of America.
No. Yes, it does. That's who he. That's who he was. That's who he was, and he pursued Oni Judge, and she ended up in Canada in poverty.
Yep.
Yes. How about that? So- and all of that is true. And even when he left his slaves to his wife, Dr. Deborah Fur Holden, she did not want them. She said, "These people hate me. They resent me. And when you're gone, I won't be able to do anything to control them." Oh, whoa. Dr. Deb, Juneteenth. I mean, when you get all of that background, what does Juneteenth mean to you? What does the fact that this is now the Senate has unanimously passed this legislation to make it a holiday? Of course, the president has to sign it, but first the House has to pass it. What do you think about this?
Well, kind of with my public health lens a little bit, I think about how it affects systems. And so if it's declared a federal holiday, people will get the day off. School children will not be in school. It's an opportunity to open up a conversation. The way Robert gives us history and the way Dwight gives us history is very different from the way history is taught and the content of history that's taught in schools. So it's an opportunity. My experience is that most people, when they think about American history and their own story, they start at a point that feels good to them. So you talk to, somebody who's the descendant of Irish immigrants, and they'll tell you, my grandparents came here from Ireland on a boat with $5 and a dream and blah, 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 and they pulled themselves up by their bootstraps. And yeah, slavery probably was pretty bad, but it was so long ago. Why can't you people just be like my grandparents? Like they anchor their story at a place that makes sense for them, not realizing, coming here with $5 and white skin privilege and a dream is better than having come from the legacy of 400 plus years of oppression and then a modern day system that we don't call slavery, but very much keeps thumb down and creates unequal opportunities for others. If we actually make this a federal holiday, it's an incremental step in opening up the conversation. What I think threatens people the most is the stories that people tell themselves about opportunity and access and the lack of privilege. People won't even acknowledge that privilege exists, because what that then means for most people is there's something bad about them. The notion that I benefited from this undermines people's whole sense of I'm self-made. You actually have to realize you maybe didn't start off at home plate. Maybe you started on third base, and that has something to do with your skin color. It has something to do with history. It has something to do with all these factors that have nothing to do with your grit and hard work, because most of us have grit and have worked really hard. And people of African heritage in this country have definitely worked tremendously hard to make a fraction of the strides that our white and other counterparts have made. So I think it's a good thing. I think it, at minimum, will open up the conversation. People will have to talk to their children about why they're out of school that day. People will be, benefiting from that day off from work. And hopefully it'll open up a conversation.
I'm hoping so. We need to have some real conversations about how things really happened. When you talk about critical race theory, for me, it's just about telling history. Otherwise, you're telling stories, right, Robert? Before we go to the callers, it's you gotta, Dr. Deb, Attorney Robert Patillo, you've got to tell. These are the real. This is, only judge. She was Martha Washington's personal maid, and they would go to Philadelphia where we had the Capitol, and you could be there, I think, 6 months, and then if the slaves were there 6 months and they were enslaved people, they were freed, and so the slaves got hip to that and they started escaping, and Oni decided, but then the president would take you back, what is it, 5 months and 30 days, or 5 months and 29 days. So he get you out the county so you would still be in slavery. Well, this woman left. She just, as we used to say, she booked. She got out. And boy, oh boy, she didn't have an easy life. But as you noted, Robert, she said, before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. I think I heard someone sing that song before. Let me go to Brad from Elk Grove. Brad, what's on your mind?
What's so amazing, and it tickles the heck out of me, is that white people are so sensitive to being told the truth. Now, these are the same white people, a lot of them men, who act all macho and I'm the overseer, I'm the man, and I'm going to be such a hard nose. I would use the other word, but they're so sensitive. That's something, why does this hurt you? And ask them, please tell me, give me a reason. And as I guess it was Robert Pertillo said, it involves having to reckon with what was done many generations ago in their name, in the white race's name. This country was built. Much of it was built. The White House was built on the back of Black Americans. And I'll take my answer off air.
Well, it's not the country that, as it existed, was built by and on the backs of Black Americans. Not most of. I heard what President Obama said. I hear him. But in order for you to get west, you had to stay east, Robert. And the country. Come on now. The country itself was built by Black people. That's it. Go to Williamsburg, Virginia, everybody. The oldest university in the United States. It's not Harvard. It's William and Mary. And when you go there, it's colonial Williamsburg. You get a chance to really understand this country. You need to see it. You need to go to the Lynching Museum. You need to go to the Wright Museum in Detroit. You need to go to the DuSable Museum here in Chicago. You need to go to the historic Vernon AME Church in Tulsa. It's important for us to see these landmarks, Robert and Dr. Deb, because they help us to understand the country. If you just stay in your little space, you don't get it. You really, really don't. Let me go to you, Dr. Reeves. Dr. Reeves, how you doing?
Good morning. Thank you for taking my call. I echo everything that's been said. Robert Patillo, I'm going to add Dr. Patillo because he always brings truth. One of the things I realize as far as educating our children in schools about slavery is that there's also that fear, because while we're teaching these kids about the Black man being the white man's burden, we're not showing them that the white man has continuously had his boot at our necks. And so when we teach one side of the story, we have to teach the other side. we also have to show them that, Black people actually have worked very hard to get to positions of greatness. We've actually worked very hard in order to be in boardrooms, and still there's a fight there. So when you're teaching the history, and sanitizing history, we make it seem as if, well, Black people are always, needing help. Right. And that's what the history is really saying. It's saying that the white man has done great work and always done great work without anyone's help, when the truth is, guess what? You've kept people enslaved. If you want to say slavery was 400 years ago, look at what's happened even today, right? We still have so many communities that have never been able to come out of poverty, right? So many Black communities where we still have people suffering. We still have schools that have not been funded well. So our students barely get the same education as kids in white schools. So, while we're taking away history from the world, we're taking away history from our children in the classroom, we're turning around and then saying, well, let's gentrify that community, whereas before they just burned down towns like Tulsa. Right. So now that everybody is watching and all eyes are on them, instead of burning down Flatbush Avenue, they gentrified Flatbush Avenue. So they're taking away so much from us that we now have to turn around and we have to make a decision. How are we going to go about educating our kids? We can't wait for them to educate our kids. We have to do the education ourselves. Right?
I think we have to do a full education, because if you look at what the Irish live with today in Northern Ireland, you see how they identify so deeply with the struggles of all oppressed people all over the world. And I think so we have to really broaden things. And unfortunately, that which was done unto them, they come over here and do unto us. The story is old as humankind. Until you really learn the lessons, filter the lessons of your past, because that is what has happened. Europeans escaped the monarchy and grinding poverty. If you look at HGTV, I'm a fan, and you look at HGTV International, I mean, they're international house hunters, you see how Europeans live. Today, they don't live that well. They do not. This is the promised land. The United States is big houses. I mean, just all of that. So we're going to have to really learn some deeper lessons here. Attorney Robert Patillo, I've got about, well, you know what? I've run out of time. But, we're going to continue to have this discussion about Juneteenth, particularly on Friday, because Juneteenth, of course, is June 19th, everybody. We got to talk about this and really understand what happened in slavery, Robert. Did you all know
1 minute.
that this man did not have wooden teeth? Robert, no one knew he didn't have wooden teeth. He took his slaves' teeth. Wait a minute. He didn't. He took them. He said, "Come here," and pulled those teeth out of these folks' heads. Broke their jaws. Who does that? The father of our country, everybody. I'm Santita Jackson. Stay right here, because we want to talk about um, the Biden Putin summit.
30.
What is going on there? Why is it of such significance? Why? And are they really the enemy, the Russians? And who could
15.
be undermining this peace process? And this process for us to become more cooperative. A lot of people have a dog in that hunt. More of the Santita Jackson Show right here on WTN AM 950 Radio in just a few minutes. Oh, Robert, you are hilarious, honey. You just need to do just a quick 5 minutes on that. 5 minutes in American history with Robert Patillo. Oh my gosh, Dr. Deb. Oh, hilarious. At least I got some good giggles. Giggles and snorts.
Well, it's so interesting because a lot of us, it wasn't until we went to school at HBCUs that and one of my professors said we stimulated our blackness, because we never had that history. We never had those things told to us. And then all of a sudden your arm starts tingling when you realize, like, oh, they lied to us about everything. Literally everything.
And that is what happens to you when you go to these black colleges. You're like, wait a minute. What? Now, I come from a different kind of background, because my mother was,
Yeah.
always doing that. I must say, and not just Santita, but those of us who grew up in Operation Breadbasket and Operation Push, we were taught history. We were taught the real history. And they brought John Hope Franklin to come to our Saturday morning forum, and we would have seminars with them, with Jack Odell, who, I mean, these people reshaped American history, and they reshaped your thinking about American history and your view of the world. And I grew up in Chicago with Lerone Bennett before the Mayflower. And the last great book he wrote before he died, he got into trouble because he told the truth about Lincoln. He said, no, he wasn't in love with black people now. He was a good guy.
Hmm.
I mean, and you remember the controversy. I mean, the firestorm of controversy that they rained down on this esteemed historian, Lerone Bennett. Don't ever forget his name, everybody. Lerone Bennett, the great Lerone Bennett. I mean, it's
And
crazy.
and then and then they wonder why second semester of your freshman year you're sitting in a Black Panther meeting because all of a sudden you realize that radical change needs to happen, and now you gotta bag it back and calm on back down.
Oh man, it is hilarious. It is hilarious.
As
Oh my
as
gosh.
one of my as one of my professors, Johnny Wilson, said, white people like to trace their lineage back to the ancient Greeks, the ancient Romans, but they want to pretend that Black history started with Kool in the Gang.
You are such a
I miss you, Robert Pillow.
Oh my gosh. Celebrate good times. Come on.
just just forget about everything that happened with
Oh
Kool in the
my
Gang.
gosh. Lord have mercy. Help him. Help him. Help him, God. Help him. Help him. Help him. 'Cause he's not well. That's true. But they, and that everything that we do is comedy. It's unbelievable.
We have Mr. Lindorf.
Oh, and you know what? I want everyone to go to this website. This can't be happening. This is David Lindorf. I'm so glad. I'm so honored to meet you and to be able to have you on the show today. Blessings to you, David Lindorf. David Lindorf. We've been having a good time talking about Juneteenth, which, of course, we're awaiting its passage in the House of Representatives and the signing into law by President Biden. But it could become a federal. The Senate says it is a federal holiday, and I guess that was the hump. And so I'm so glad that you're with us today as we talk about Biden and Putin. I want you to know he has written so much interesting work, but this piece in Salon is fabulous. Peace Washing is a network of major donors neutralizing activism in the peace movement. There are a lot of people who do not want us to be at peace. It's a lot. And
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
well, the interesting thing about that story, Peter, is that some of the people who don't want peace are calling themselves peace people. And when you look at that grant group, things like the Arms Control Association or Plowshares, for God's sakes, these are people who say that they want peace, but then when you look at what they actually do, like I showed in that article, that 29 of the people who were involved in boards on this Peace and Security Funders Group, so there's the name of it, actually sent a letter endorsing Flournoy for Secretary of Defense. This is a woman who not only is the ultimate revolving door with the arms industry, but who has been in confrontation with Russia for all the way back to the Obama administration. So, and a lot of them were. I mean, these are organizations that you.
Dave Lindorf, hold that thought. We're going to be up in a hot second. Hold on. Oh, we're about to come up. I don't want you to waste your best stuff. This is great. Whew.
I thought we were on.
Oh, we're on Facebook Live. But you know what? I didn't want you to stop because this is just such great stuff.
Oh, okay.
This is no. It's great. But I was talking to them. They had been on in the prior segment. But just it's because
Gotcha.
watching the theater of this historic moment. I said CNN. The only time your ratings spike up in the United States is when we have an international event. Okay, so I get it. But I don't know
1
why
minute.
it's so historic right now. I don't know. But okay, I'll take it. Ugh. It's too much. It's just too much, Dave Lindorf. This can't be happening. But it is. It is. It is happening. It's happening. It's happening right now. And we're gonna talk about this because all of these groups. It's just like you all say, you say you want peace, but do you really? I mean, why is he now the enemy du jour? I want to talk about all that, everybody. With you on the Santita Jackson Show. So everybody, call me or text me
15.
at 773-763-WCPT, and we will be up within 10 seconds.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Determined, unstoppable, achieving the impossible. We're standing tall with our heads held high. We are victorious.
Welcome, everybody, to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Wednesday, June 16th, 2021. I'm Santita Jackson, coming to you from the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, AM 950 Radio, up to the north, Minneapolis, St. Paul, but WCPT 820 is my home here in Chicago. I want you to call me or text me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278 as we talk about the Biden-Putin summit. What do you think about it? They're saying that it's historic. Why is it historic? And do some people really not want us to have peace? Well, we got to talk about that, or to be at peace and to be able to work cooperatively. Got to talk about that. I want to hear what your thoughts are on this. Is this historic? Um, what do you think? 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. I've got the brilliant David Lindorf on with us as our guest. He's an Izzy Award winner. Now, the Izzy Award is really, to me, like it's the Pulitzer. It's the Pulitzer for the truth tellers in journalism. I.F. Stone, legendary journalist who really fought to expose government corruption and McCarthyism and on and on and on. Well, there's an award named after him because there's some journalists out here who are still trying to do the same thing. And of course, Dave Lindorf is a brilliant investigative journalist who is doing that. And he is also the curator of this site. This can't be happening. And you really need to go see it. I mean, the archives are fantastic, and I read it all the time. I'm going to get you some quick headlines before we go to Mr. Lindorf. Chicago will have a high of 72 degrees. It will be sunny. Minneapolis, St. Paul, a high of 92 degrees and sunny. The Dow closed down 94 points yesterday. The Nasdaq closed down 101 points, and the S&P 500 closed down 8 points. The Twins were shut out by the Mariners. The Mariners 10, the Twins 0. Will they redeem themselves? Well, they'll have an opportunity as the Twins face off against the Mariners today. The White Sox shut out the Rays, however, and they'll be playing the Rays once again today. The Cubs, well, they fell to the Mets. Mets 3, Cubs 2. They'll be playing once again today. And in the NBA playoffs, Nets 114, the Bucks 108, and the Hawks will be playing the 76ers, and the Clippers will be playing the Jazz tonight, everybody. Well, previously, a secret batch of emails was released by the House Oversight Committee yesterday, and the messages shed new light on how former President Donald Trump pressured the Justice Department during his quest to overturn the 2020 election results. Of note, everybody, is the fact that Jeffrey Rosen, who was the acting attorney general in the final days of Trump's presidency, was prepared to resign rather than follow the dictates of President Donald Trump. The CDC has determined that the Delta variant is now a variant of concern. As many as 10% of the infections in the United States are due to this particular strain that is originated, according to the latest information, from India. And well, like at the top of the news today is the Biden-Putin summit. President Joe Biden is meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Geneva today. What will happen? It's a much anticipated summit. Everyone says that President Biden is really, really ready, that he's been very prepared. Now, I want to know what you think about this, everybody, because David Lindorf, he said that in the past, he said that President Putin doesn't have a soul, that he's a killer. That seems like an inauspicious beginning to a summit, but he's calmed down that rhetoric a bit. Welcome to the show, David Lindorf.
Hi, thanks for having me on. Let me just point out to people, it's thiscan'tbehappening.net, or they'll go to com or org or something and get something weird.
Thank you. No, thank you. I apologize for that, but it's everybody's a fantastic site, and you get a really I just love investigative journalists who really give me the news and not some form of their opinion, or the people who help us to engage in groupthink. And that's one of the things I think that's been happening with Russia. There are a lot of people who, it seems, want us to reflexively hate Russia and Putin and on and on and on. So talk to me, because Norman Solomon said, Democrats and progressives are undermining the potential of this summit. And your great work in Salon says peace washing is a network of major donors neutralizing activism in the peace movement. Wow. With Democrats in power for now, powerful funders may be trying to tame or silence progressive peace activists. What's going on?
Well, that's kind of basically, I did this article that got a grant from the Institute for Public Accuracy, and we tried to get it into a number of prominent sort of liberal publications, and none of them were interested in it. Most of them not-for-profit groups that probably are worried about their own grants. So, I suggested Salon because, oddly enough, that is a for-profit, although I don't think it makes any profit, but it's a for-profit media company, and they snapped it up right away, and want a follow-up now too. So, that I found that interesting. One of the things about this current era that's very confusing is that the list voices for not having some kind of détente with are liberals, or at least a certain group of liberals. Let's say, in some cases, just when I think of friends of mine and whom I meet and discuss things like this once in a while, it's straight out liberals. It's mostly neoliberals who've taken control of the Democratic Party since really Jimmy Carter, and neoliberals really want the confrontation. They want a what they call a muscular military in the U.S. and a muscular foreign policy, muscular confrontational against China and Russia and any other significant power that steps out of line, like Iran or Venezuela, not significant power that steps out of line. These neoliberals want that kind of confrontation. And where it shows up in the funding that I thought was interesting is that as in the environmental movement back in the 80s, which had been in the 70s very militant. From like that was when it first sprung up, with Earth Day and marches and Earth First efforts to climb into trees and save them from being cut down, and a lot of stuff. I mean, hammering spikes into trees so that the saws couldn't be used in them safely. Fairly aggressive protection of nature. And then you had the creation of the Environmental Granting Association, or Granters Association. And after that, they kind of watered down the peace movement and turned it into these sort of larger firms, larger organizations that took corporate money, like from Chevron and other oil company interests and chemical companies, and allowed those companies, they called it greenwashing. They allowed those companies to say, hey, we're green, we do this, we do that, but meanwhile destroying the environment. And now we're seeing that happen in the peace movement, starting in the 90s. It was a decade later, but I think they kind of copied the tactic of the corporate interests that used this grants to tame the movement. And so now you have money flowing into these big, I call them big peace, like we used to call them big green, the big peace. And if you look at the name, it's Peace and Security Funders Group. And that's a big difference. Some of the activists that I talked to said, peace and security are different words completely. And security, you have to ask yourself, security for who? I mean, the U.S. does not create security around the world with its military. It creates instability. It murders. It destroys. It kills millions of people since World War II have been killed by the U.S. military and interventions. So when you say security and you put that in your name, you're saying, what I'm really for is a maintenance of U.S. imperial power around the world.
I'm wondering.
So it's peace on our terms, peace on our terms.
Well, because it seems to me, because you pointed out at the top of your article that President Trump made overtures, and you said they were fawning overtures, but they were overtures nonetheless to redefine the relationship and make it a cooperative or a friendly one with the president of North Korea, with the president of China, with the president of Russia, and the media criticized him mercilessly. But something else happened. Some things turned with the arrival of the Biden presidency. Please explain.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I mean, let me just say about Trump. I don't credit that guy with having an ounce of strategic intellect or with having any morality at all on the world stage. I mean, he's perfectly happy to fund, for example, more and better nuclear weapons, and ask the outrageous question, why do we have nuclear weapons if we aren't going to use them, in supporting the idea of making smaller nukes that would be usable. I mean, this is a crazy guy who operates on a short-term interest of his own advantage, and I mean, I think he's a certifiable narcissist and sociopath. But having said that, the reaction to some of the things that he had done, like calling for peace with Korea, North Korea, is not an easy idea in itself. I mean, remember, this guy never has sought peace with Iran. He's been worse. He broke out of the Iran agreement that Obama negotiated, which was one of the few good things Obama did world stage, and messed that up. But he did talk about peace with North Korea and was pilloried for that, as though, how can you do that? I mean, we've in a technical state of war with Korea since the end of the Korean War. That's 70 years now, almost. And that's crazy. If you want to make peace with somebody that you've been at war with for 70 years, that's not nuts. And then in Russia, in the case of Russia, I think objectively that there's plenty of evidence that Trump's interest in Russia was commercial and personal. He wanted good terms there because he wanted to cut deals there and have hotels there, and I have a very low opinion of him. Let me say that. But again, what happens? And he wants to have smoother relations. Russia. How can we not want to have smoother relations with Russia? They have 4,800 clear weapons pointing at us on hair trigger alert, because that's what we have under a nuclear arms limitation treaty that we're still, adhering to, sort of. And we don't need that many. China 300, we don't dare blow them up because they have 300, and 300 is more than enough to deter. Absent a reliable anti-missile system, 300 big rockets with big bombs on the top of them are enough, so that any kind of strategist, except a madman, is not going to start a war, because even a few of those slipping through would be catastrophic in the U.S. and for the world. I mean, if the U.S. launched a surprise attack on one or both of its major enemies, Russia and China, and managed somehow to catch them asleep at the switch and they couldn't earn any back, the world would be destroyed by the U.S. attack. So, because it would be all out. We would attack partially, because we'd have to destroy a chance of retaliation. So we would destroy the world with our missiles. It's a little like Dr. Strangelove, with the Doomsday Machine. Yes. We all have, there's three of us with Doomsday Machines, and we can't use them, or we shouldn't think we can. So that's not crazy. When I hear that there's going to be a summit, and the posturing is, how tough is Obama going to be at that? Is Biden going to be at the summit? Is he going to stand up Putin? For God's sakes, that's not how you start a talk. It's not. We have this crazy idea that the U.S. has to be, the preeminent power and show itself to be the preeminent power. We don't negotiate without preconditions. Ever since World War II, we got this bad idea that, we got the Germans to surrender unconditionally, and probably the war lasted a lot longer because we did that. If we had, there are books written about this. If we had let the Germans know, let the German high command know that we wouldn't destroy the entire country and wouldn't execute them all if they would surrender and overthrow Hitler. They probably would have overthrown Hitler because they knew the end was coming, and they didn't want the Russians to win and take over half of Germany. So they probably would have cut a deal with the Western powers that would have been a little less than absolute surrender. And the same thing with Japan. If we say, we had to drop the atomic bombs to get the Japanese to end the war, that is simply not true. The Japanese were suing for peace, but we were insisting that the emperor had to be removed and subjected to war crimes trials. And because we were insisting on that, which we never did, after all, in the end, MacArthur realized the advantage of keeping the emperor in power with no power and not executing him to get him to keep the Japanese people quiet during the occupation, which was a very peaceful occupation after the war. Those two bombs did not have to be dropped to the war. And it probably could have ended even earlier, not as late as it did, had we been willing to negotiate a surrender early that included allowing the U.S. to stay in power. But nobody ever talks about that. But it gave us the idea that we could insist on absolute surrender. And so after that, in our negotiations anywhere, we've refused to negotiate without preconditions.
What should we expect from all of this today? I mean, what is a negotiation today? I've got about 3.5 minutes. What should we be looking for?
I don't know. I don't know whether we can expect too much because certainly in Biden's case, he's playing to the home audience. So he's going there so that he can come back and say, I stood up to Putin. You know, I talked tough to Putin, and I told him he was a killer, and I told him he had no soul, and I told him he had to release Navalny, and all of these demands that aren't going to happen. And Russia's not a penny ante banana republic, and it's not going to do things like that that make Putin weak because he's playing to his local audience too.
He knows that. So I'm like, what are we doing here? And why is this so historic?
Yeah.
Help me.
Because it's not. First of all, it's not historic. We've had summit meetings with the Russians when they were at their peaks of power. I mean, we negotiated with them in the Cuban Missile Crisis and resolved it. We negotiated with them over the Berlin crisis. Times when we came close to using nuclear weapons, we negotiated down, and we negotiated Kennedy negotiated a no more atmospheric nuclear testing treaty. Johnson negotiated with the Vietnamese to try to end the war. Nixon ended up losing the war because he wouldn't negotiate. But Nixon went and met with Khrushchev, I think twice. And, there's a long history of negotiating with Russian leaders. So it's not historic in any way. And when we've negotiated with the Russians or the Soviets before them, we did reach deals, reached peace agreements. Reagan negotiated with Gorbachev and ended the Cold War and struck really major deals on nuclear weapons. Unfortunately, Reagan didn't go far enough because Gorbachev was willing to offer eliminating nuclear weapons, and Reagan turned him down because he wanted to have Star Wars, which would have been an impossible deal for Russia, for Soviet Union, because we could shoot down their missiles and they couldn't shoot down our missiles. Could achieve a Star Wars thing. So we didn't want to give up our superiority in that case. But we did negotiate down to a much lower level of nuclear weapons. And I think for a while we had them off of hair trigger, but now they're back on hair trigger, which should cause us to say, well, we really need to talk seriously here. This is nuts.
We need to talk seriously about peace. I've got 30 seconds. The last of these seconds belong to you.
Well, I just hope that people.
1 minute.
There should be a flooding of calls to the White House and to key Congress people that we want real reductions in threat with Russia, and that Biden should talk seriously. We don't care about his personal relationship with Putin, and he should keep it to reducing our military expenditures and reducing the threat of nuclear war, period.
Dave Lindorf, everybody.
30.
This can't be happening.net. This can't be happening.net. It's a really tremendous website. And of course, brilliant investigative journalist is the award winner. Thank you so much for being with us today. And just now,
15.
You're no longer a stranger. Now you're part of the family here.
10.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, of course, I can't wait to have you back.
5.
Let's talk to Natasha Brown about Juneteenth and what Black Voters Matter are doing to get people registered to vote and to deal with the issue of Joe Manchin in West Virginia. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes.
We are rejoicing with our heads.
Thank you so much. All right. All right. Do that. Okay. Hey, everybody. There we go. Hey, Jarvis. Hey, Elena. Michelle Torres. How are you? Jewel. Richard. Let me see. No, I don't know how to pronounce this. Is it Tashe Max? I want to make sure that I want to get it right. Um, Let me see. Sheila with all the emoji. I love it. So everybody, what do you think? What do you think about this?
We have Ms. Brown.
About this historic meeting. Keep your eyes peeled, and you know, it's boy. I mean, they had Wolf Blitzer out of bed early this morning, covering this historic meeting, and I was like, why is this historic? But I said, okay. All right, you guys. So hey, Latasha Brown from Black Voters Matter.
Good morning. Good morning, Santita. Happy to be here.
Well, I'm glad to have you. We're going to be up in just a couple of minutes, but I thank you so much for being with us today. You know, we're on Facebook Live right now.
Okay.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. But, you know, just very quickly before we come up on the air, how can people get involved in your Freedom Ride?
You know, we want people to go to our website. We believe that everybody can be a freedom rider, whether they join us physically or they can participate virtually. So what we want people to do is go and register online at www.blackvotersmatterfund.org/freedom-ride. You know, but if they go to our website, www.blackvotersmatterfund, they'll see the information, the tab, how to get there. Or they can text us. Text Freedom Ride to 797979. That's Freedom Ride, one word, to 797979, or go to our website and register. Come on, be a Freedom Rider today.
Amen to that. Come on, everybody. And what are you all riding for?
We're having a Freedom Ride for voting rights that currently, as we know, most of us know that voting rights are under attack right now in this country. That Black voters came out in record numbers last year, and as a result, kind of in some places shocked the world. In some places like Georgia, my home state, a state that traditionally has been, a Republican state, there were, Black voters actually led to the difference of putting two Democratic senators
45
in office and flipping the state. And so as a result, what we saw is legislation to undermine voting rights in this country, to make it more difficult for people to have access to the ballot. But we're seeing that not just in Georgia, but in Texas and in Florida and in 47 states all around the nation, a total of 47 states all around the nation. And so we are doing a freedom ride for voting rights. There's kind of a couple of reasons. One, this is the 60th anniversary.
Hold on, we're coming up. Because I want you to tell everybody that, now, because I want everybody, because you're going to get them fired up.
10.
That's right. Okay.
Love it.
5.
We are ready.
Oh, yeah. So, yes. And I'm going to, of course, call you right back right after the show.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Determined, unstoppable, achieving the impossible. We're standing tall with our heads held high. We are victorious.
Oh, yes, we are the co-founder of Black Voters Matter, our sister beloved. Latasha Brown is with us this morning. They are kicking off the Freedom Rides for voting rights on Juneteenth, everybody. So much history is meeting right now, and you can be a part of it. If you want to get on the bus, you can do that. But if you want to participate virtually, you can do that too. But why the Freedom Rides? Why the Freedom Rides now? Why a voting registration drive? Aren't we far away from 2020? Latasha Brown?
This we're away from 2020, but then we're not. As showing the reason why we're doing the Freedom Ride. Let's think about it. The Freedom Ride took place 60 years ago. It was 60 years ago when courageous students, black and white students, came together and decided that they wanted to end segregation. They had the audacity to decide to get on a bus and they were going to go down south to the deepest part of this nation that they knew where segregation was trying to have a stronghold. And as a result, they won because they literally stood together in their power, lifting their voice, saying, no, that's not what we want to do going forward. What we want is we deserve to be able to freely move and to freely be able to work together and live together. And so that was 60 years ago. But here we are seeing that same kind of spirit that anchored segregation is now that spirit behind voting rights. It's a belief that some people are inferior than others. It's a belief that some people should have more power than others. It's a belief that some people should be disenfranchised. And so what we're doing is, in the spirit of the Freedom Rides of 60 years ago, we believe that there's a call of action now, that just like those courageous folks stood up against segregation and they made a difference. They ended it. They won by working collectively together in the spirit of love and unity. That the same thing is available to us now. If it works, we've got to literally be able to use that tool and be instructive of what those people did. And so, in that same spirit, we are doing a Freedom Ride for voting rights. As people may know, if you've been following the news lately, you know that there is an all-out open attack on voting rights in over 47 states in this nation. Georgia kind of led it off, which is my home state, where I live. And it is a result, what we think it has been a result of being a punitive measure for punishing people, trying to punish folks for showing up and showing out using their civil rights. And as a result, you're seeing this targeted strategy to actually make voting less accessible, making voter even harder in states that have been egregious as it relates to voting rights. And so what we're doing, just as the Freedom Riders had to answer the call and use their humanity and the power of love and organizing to make the difference and to push up against Jim Crow. Once again, Jim Crow is trying to show his head in this voting rights battle, and what we're going to do is the same thing. We're pushing up against it. We're doing a 10-city tour. We are setting it off, which is very appropriate, we believe, on Juneteenth, which is now going to be a national holiday. Juneteenth on this Saturday all the way to June the 26th. We're starting, though, a pre-lunch this Friday in New Orleans, Louisiana, and we're going to, in that pre-lunch, we're honoring, being lifted and blessed by original Freedom Riders. So we're going down before we get started. What we wanted to do is to make sure that we are literally centering and anchoring this, even in our community, to recognize that our history is important, that it is important that we know that we're building on our history, but our history matters, and that we matter, and we have to continue to fight, and the fight that we will continue to push back on voting rights. And so on Friday, we will be in New Orleans for the pre-lunch. We'll be met by original Freedom Riders. We'll have a program that share their stories. Then we're going to do a voting rights march from the Treme Center to the Congo Square, which some may know was a place that represented liberation for people of African and indigenous descent in New Orleans, where they would come together during the period that our folks were enslaved. They would come together on Sundays and literally be able to generate joy as a community in spite of the fact that they were enslaved. And so we think it's appropriate that we're going to start in New Orleans to kind of bless us off, to get us started. And then we're tracking on 10 states. We're going to Jackson, Mississippi, and and Birmingham, Alabama, Nashville, Tennessee, Raleigh, North Carolina, Atlanta, Georgia, Charleston, West Virginia. Yes, we are going to West Virginia. It wasn't on the original Freedom Ride, but it certainly needs to be on the Freedom Ride now, based on Senator Manchin's disturbing statement that he's not going to support He's not going to support the For the People Act. And then we're going to, on the 26th, we will be in, and then we're going to Richmond, Virginia. And then on the 26th, which is next Saturday, we're going to go on we will be in D.C. We have buses meeting us. We've got 12 partners, national partners, that have joined us, that we're really excited about organizing together and have a voting rights rally in D.C. because there are three issues that we're lifting up. The first is we're pushing for federal legislation in light of what has happened on the state level. We've got federal legislation. And so while voter suppression is like literally sweeping the country right now, there are remedies that are available to us right now that we've got to get the Senate to pass. That is For the People Act and the John Lewis Voter Advancement Act. The For the People Act, what it does is it helps set a to vote that would literally supersede what we're seeing happening on the state level. It also addresses gerrymandering. It also addresses campaign financing. It addresses those things that it creates a federal standard so that literally the process itself becomes more democratic and more inclusive and more protected. And then there's the John Lewis Voter Advancement Act, which is essentially putting the teeth back into the original Voting Rights Act. It creates a new formula in which states, before they make any changes to the to the electoral process, they would literally have to go through this like a pre-clearance clause, like what they took out 8 years ago in the Shelby versus Holder case. The significance of next week, though, I want people to understand that this is also happening, which is part of why we're organizing. This is happening during the week that the Senate is taking up these bills. And so that's why it's important that everybody sees themselves as a freedom rider, whether they join us and the local stops or one of the 10 local stops that I mentioned, whether they join us at the big rally that we're doing in D.C., grassroots rallies that we're doing in D.C. on the Mall on June the 26th, or even if they just join us online. There are actions that people can do because that week, next week, happens to be the week that they're taking the bills up in the Senate, according to Senator Schumer. In addition to that, we want people to know it's interesting how history finds itself kind of aligned. That week is also significant as well. On Monday, on the 21st of that week, that would be the anniversary, of the murder of Chaney, Goodman, and Schwerner. The three young men that were killed in Mississippi for trying to register folks to vote, just actually helping in that process, organizing and seeking to push for the right to vote for the people of Mississippi. On that Friday, it would be the 8th anniversary. We will be in Richmond, Virginia, and then we're going on to D.C. But that Friday, it is the 8th anniversary of the Shelby versus Holder decision. And so we're actually on that evening, as in D.C., we're having a press conference on the steps of the Supreme Court, because it was the actions of the Supreme Court that actually opened up the floodgates to the voter suppression that we see now. And we're holding folks accountable. If this is really around holding these institutions, the folks who have abused power, holding them accountable, but more importantly, using our power just like we always have to make change. There's a song, a civil rights song that, we sing down south, ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. And that's what we literally have to stand in. We have to stand in that space, y'all, that we're not gonna let anybody turn us around. We have to ride out for voting rights. Every time our right to vote is under attack, it requires us to respond, right, with a message that is even stronger and more fierce, and to say we ain't gonna let nobody turn us around, and we are not gonna just sit by idly where one group of people or one political party or one particular Democrat from West Virginia or whoever tries to stand in our way to undermine democracy in this nation.
How should we deal with Joe Manchin in this particular moment? And not just Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski. I mean, you have some vulnerable Republicans who could move too. Are we over-focusing on Manchin? I mean, although it seems that blacks were his margin of victory when he became the U.S. Senator. what
No,
is
no,
your reaction
Manchin.
at this moment?
Yeah, thank you for raising that. I don't think there's any such thing as over focusing on Manchin. Manchin has been open and vocal, and in many ways, he leads the pack. There are other senators, as you raised, that are hiding behind him, but Manchin has decided that he's going to stand in the space of the obstructionists, and so as a result, I think that he should be met accordingly, with the same kind of that's calling him. Yes, right. He should be. He should be called out, right? There is no such thing until he is either removed out of office or held accountable or literally be able to stand. Let's be honest. While this is being led by the Republicans based on the big lie that Trump told, the truth of the matter, those of us that live in the South, we've said this consistently. Conservative white Democrats have often been the problem. Have been the problem as well. And so here he stands in the seat of in the tradition of a conservative white Democrat from the South that fundamentally is now standing in the way of voting rights within that legacy. We're going to tell him that this is a new day, this is a new dawn. The truth of the matter, he did win. That while there's not a sizable population of African Americans in his state, there is the margin of victory of running as a Democrat in West Virginia, like was propelled that black voters did make a difference. And then at the end of the day, while this voting rights, these voting rights issues have been targeted, and we know that the impetus of it has been to impact and will disproportionately impact black voters. This doesn't just impact black voters. Anytime you make it harder to vote, you make it harder to vote for all of us, right? And so fundamentally, this is really an issue that the Republicans have made voting partisan, but that's not a partisan issue. I should have the right to vote Republican and Libertarian and Democrat or Independent, whatever I want to vote, right? And be able to exercise that. I should not be punished based on the color of my skin and punished because you think that we have a propensity to vote for a particular kind of party. More of us vote for a particular party. Part of that may be because your party don't have anything to offer. And so instead of the Republicans literally taking the opportunity, seeing this as this moment as an opportunity to build an agenda that is inclusive, that is strengthening democracy, even if it's different ideas from the Democratic Party. Instead of them seeking that opportunity, what they do is seek to continue to be in power by using corrupt tactics, by leaning into corruption, by supporting an effort that actually undermines the fundamental basic right of voting in this country, which is a cornerstone of democracy. And in addition to this,
no, because I wanted to ask you, do you think Democrats have been too tolerant of Joe Manchin? I mean, should he be primaried? See, I think of Booker down in Kentucky,
yes,
who did not get support from the National Democratic apparatus until very, very late. He got no support. He started at zero and almost became the
that's right.
nominee. And that happens all the time. That's the Bernie story. That's the Jackson story. On and on and on. You have the most exciting candidates who come out of nowhere, but they come from the people. Well, it's not they don't come out of nowhere. They come from the ground. They don't come from the C-suite.
That's
They
right.
come from these streets. And so, wait a
That's right.
minute. You got all of this poverty. This is one of the four most federally subsidized states, the state and the people in the country. Poverty reigns in West Virginia. Now, the Democrats, to their credit, are starting to run some commercials to that effect to talk about what their needs are. But I'm like, wait a minute, you all need to run somebody, Latasha.
Absolutely. What we're saying, Santita, you bring an excellent point. It's interesting because even as we are doing this work and I am calling out the actions of the Republicans, not because I'm saying that the Democrats do no wrong, just because the Republicans have decided to take the position of aligning themselves with a racist agenda and be obstructionists, right? But the bottom line is that we've allowed this entire process to become too driven around protecting the power of political parties. The Constitution says we the people. It doesn't say we the parties. And anytime a political party or a person that represents a party or a representative stands against people, the interests of people, or what is going to actually help to try to take away the power of people, we have to call them out, regardless of what political party or affiliation that they have, which is why we have to call Manchin out. And if that means we have to primary Manchin, now the challenge is Manchin is not going to run for office. So I actually think there's something a little deeper, more sinister here. He's not running for the Senate. He's already said he's not running for the Senate. So then you think about it, well, then what is he afraid of? Well, if you go back and look at Manchin's history, he has a strong relationship with the Koch brothers. Yes, the same Koch brothers who have been literally bankrolling. The Koch brothers are the ones who have been bankrolling the Republican Party and those efforts to literally undermine the right to vote. That the voter suppression efforts has been, for the most part, supported and bankrolled by the Koch brothers. And so if you go back and look at Manchin's comments, and you look at, and he has been a supporter or been supported by the Koch brothers. And so there are many that believe that this relationship, this unholy alliance that he has with the Koch brothers is part of a deeper, more sinister strategy to literally be able to bring in this agenda, that there's possibly some personal interest that he has, that literally is why he is standing in that role of an obstructionist. Some people may also not know that in Manchin's district, there is a pharmaceutical company that is closing right now. That will, and at the end of July, this pharmaceutical company is closing in his state now, and they're going to lose 2,000 union jobs in Morgantown. Now, let me tell you the significance of that. Morgantown only has a population of 18,000. So can you imagine in a city with a total population of 18,000, which means that there's probably, 6,000 people who are
losing their job.
Right. That are losing their job, right? And this is, we're talking about adults. This may be 9,000 folks who are even 6,000 folks who are even voted. Who are even working age. And so you're going to lose 2,000 of those jobs in Morgantown. And we're not hearing a lot about it, but let me tell you the significance about it. The significance about it is that company was actually ran by Manchin's daughter. His daughter ran that company, this pharmaceutical company, and part of it is she was very controversial with the EpiPen. I don't know if folks remember when the EpiPen came out, and the Canadian companies, pharmaceutical companies, were like, "Why are y'all charging so much? We can they start offering it far, far much cheaper." And she stood the line. As a result, now those folks are, so there's a lack of accountability with him. And so we don't know if that leaves him vulnerable in any kind of way. I don't know how that affects him in any kind of, I know it should. I'm not sure of how just yet. But the bottom line is that West Virginians deserve better. They deserve more. But we in this nation deserve more and deserve better.
Everybody, we're talking with LaTosha Brown, co-founder of Black Voters Matter, Harvard fellow, brilliant singer. She does so many great things well. They are leading the charge with many other organizations to have freedom rides that will be kicking off on Juneteenth, to get people registered to vote, to get people involved. We are in the midst of the 2022 season, everybody. Do not be fooled. Reverend Dr. Raphael Warnock, Senator Warnock, is up for re-election right now. And to me, the Republicans, they're suspiciously quiet. LaTosha, I've not seen, we saw the former senator who floated his name. He said, "I'm going to run." Then he stepped back. I said, what's going on? And they're being very, very, very stealth. And I'm wondering what that is going to mean for the Warnock candidacy. This is not an insurmountable challenge, but it's a challenge nonetheless because they're being so quiet. But he is up for re-election. Everybody. And we got to get registered to vote. What is the strategy? I've got, just in a couple of minutes, what is the strategy to help save that seat? Because Ossoff is not up for another 5 years.
That's right. No, you're right. they're being publicly quiet, but they're not. We're hearing, they've been creating all kinds of organizations. There's a letter. It's interesting. My aunt contributed to one of the TVN stations, one of the stations on TV, the Christian stations, and it's clear to me that they're using that list to send out a letter to folks who have sent money to that station, and they're asking them to register. That they're asking to register as Republicans. I think that's interesting. So what they're doing is they're organizing. In addition to that, I actually suspect, and I believe that they're going to run a person of color. I think they're going to run another black man. I think they're going to run, and I think they're looking for the person. I think they'll run either Herschel Walker or someone like that, in the primary. Kemp has his own problems because the word on the street is that Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, Trump is upset with him because he didn't feel like he did everything he could to steal the election for him. And so it's the word on the street is he's going to be primary. But let me say, getting back to what I think we need to do, I think there's 3 quick things that we're doing that we need to do. One is continuing to organize, y'all. Organizing works. And so it can't just be episodic about one election or one race. Even though we are super, super tired, I've got to say we're tired, right? But we're also committed because we've been working nonstop. When January 6th happened, we didn't stop. When the election happened with Warnock, we didn't stop. We've continued to work, and so we've got to continue to build. And that's part of what I think there are 3 strategies. The first is that we've got to take the message to the streets. We have to continue to talk to voters, which we've been doing in the state of Georgia, of how critical voting is, and also be honest with them about the limitations of voting, so that the conversations we're having is based in we're being authentic. We're not telling folks that voting's going to fix everything, but that it does matter. The second thing is we took our power, our organizers to the community. We have to organize in the courtrooms. We are pursuing the state of Georgia currently right now around, it's not over. Those voter suppression bills that were passed in the state, we're going to hold folks accountable. Kemp got to be held accountable for doing that. And so we've been organizing people around that and educating them around that, but we're suing them. We're suing the state of Georgia. And the third thing is we've got to organize in the coffers. So that's why we launched the corporate accountability campaign. Our coalition launched that. We have literally been putting pressure in the state of Georgia on corporations and businesses that, one, are investing in these elected officials in on the local level that have been leading this voter suppression efforts, and those that have not been vocal against the voter suppression bills that have passed in this country. With all of that, we're organizing in every corner, in every sector that we feel to organize, and we've been engaging people. And believe it or not, folks have been responding because we haven't stopped working. And we're also working on in local elections. Today, we got elections. We have elections in Georgia, right, that we are literally yesterday, and then we have elections in Georgia, that local elections that we're working in with nobody have heard of, nobody seen anything. We see those as an opportunity to engage people and to continue to build our infrastructure and the ecosystem. So the way that we know how to push up against what is happening is to organize. What we've seen as the most effective strategy is he who organizes or she who organizes the people literally has the power behind them. And so that's what we're doing, which is why we're having a rally in Georgia. Georgia next week is one of the stops as well in Atlanta, because we want people to know that we have to continue to engage and to continue to recruit young voters and first-time voters in the process.
Okay, I've got less than a minute. Where do we begin? How can we become freedom riders with Black Voters Matter?
You can become a freedom rider today. Come on, y'all. It's time to ride out again. You can join us and physically, or you can join us virtually. You can text Freedom Ride to 797979. That's right. Text Freedom Ride to 797979, and we'll send you all the information of how you can join us if we come to a city near you, or even to join us virtually. The second thing is you can go to our website, www.blackvotersmatterfund.org/Freedom Ride. But if you go to blackvotersmatterfund.org, you'll be able to find information. Follow me on social media. I'm on social media, Miss MS Latasha Brown, MS LATOSH Brown. On all my social media, I'm doing lives. We're doing live from the bus so people can feel a part and be a part of the virtual. And then on this Sunday, we're doing a virtual watch party. We're actually watching together all across the nation a documentary on the Freedom Ride. So people join us. Go to our website or text us.
We love you, Latasha Brown, co-founder Black Voters Matter. We love you, we love you, we love you, and thank you for all that you are and do, for all the work that you do. Everybody, let's become freedom riders. See you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. God bless. Latasha Brown.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sweetie. Now you give me 1 minute. Hang up, because we're gonna make that phone call.
Okay. And then you're gonna call me back.
I'm calling you right back, so I don't call you. We don't speak over the radio. We'll do it on my phone.
I got it.
Okay. All right, sweetie. Thank you. You were great.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thank you for having me. Okay, bye-bye.
Oh, please. Okay. Oh, thank you, Paul. Have a good one, honey. I'll see you tomorrow.